If you're wondering why you're seeing a video about Ecclesia Dei from me instead of something on women's ordination or World Youth Day, this video will sort of set the stage for those. They'll follow in the week. Now, on to the topic at hand. It's not a secret that I have little trust in anything coming out of the Vatican these days. That's especially true in anything that touches on traditional Catholicism, be it doctrinal matters or the liturgy. The two are inseparable issues for me, for I can see in the traditional liturgy a continuity that links worship to practice that I frankly rarely see in most Novus Ordo Missae parishes today, which is why I have been dreading the suppression of Ecclesia Dei Commission for some time. Over the weekend, the commission was officially and formally suppressed by Motu Proprio by Pope Francis. I have the full text for you here to listen to for yourself. It comes courtesy of LifeSite News. I put the full text, copied from LifeSite, on returntotradition.org. If you want to read it, or you can go to LifeSite and read their translation on their own website. Either works for me. On to the Motu Proprio. Apostolic letter issued Motu Proprio on the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei. For over 30 years, the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei, established with the Motu Proprio Ecclesia Dei ad flicta of 2nd July 1988, has carried out with sincere solicitude and praiseworthy concern the task of collaborating with bishops and the dicasteries of the Roman Curia in facilitating the full ecclesial communion of priests, seminarians, communities, or individual men and women religious linked to the fraternity founded by Bishop Marcel Lefebvre, who wished to remain united to the successor of Peter in the Catholic Church, preserving their own spiritual and liturgical traditions. In this way, it was able to exercise its authority and competence in the name of the Holy See over those societies and associations until otherwise provided. Subsequently, by virtue of the Motu Proprio Summorum Pontificum of 7 July 2007, the Pontifical Commission extended the authority of the Holy See to those institutes and religious communities which had adhered to the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite and had assumed the precedent traditions of religious life, supervising the observance and application of the provisions established. 2 years later, my venerable predecessor, Benedict XVI, with the Motu Proprio Ecclesia Unitatem of 2nd July 2009, reorganized the structure of the Pontifical Commission in order to make it more suited to the new situation created by the remission of the excommunication of the 4 bishops consecrated without pontifical mandate. And furthermore, considering that after this act of grace, the questions dealt with by the same Pontifical Commission were of a primarily doctrinal nature, he more organically linked it to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith while maintaining its initial aims, but modifying its structure. Now, since the Feria 4 of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith on 15th of November 2017 formulated the request that dialogue between the Holy See and the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X be conducted directly by the aforementioned congregation, as the questions being dealt with are of a doctrinal nature, to which I gave my approval in an audience with the prefect on the 24th November 2017. And this proposal was accepted by the plenary session of the same congregation celebrated from 23 to 26 January 2018. I have arrived, after ample reflection, at the following decision. Considering that today the conditions which led the Holy Pontiff John Paul II to institute the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei have changed, noting that the institutes and religious communities which habitually celebrate in the extraordinary form have today found their own stability of number and of life, recognizing that the aims and questions dealt with by the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei are of a predominantly doctrinal order, and wishing that these aims be made ever more evident to the conscience of the ecclesial communities, with this apostolic letter, Motu Proprio Data, I decree that 1. The Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei, instituted on the 2nd of July 1988 with the Motu Proprio Ecclesia Dei ad flicta, is suppressed. 2. The duties of the commission in question are entirely assigned to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, within which a special section will be established that is committed to continue the work of vigilance, promotion, and protection conducted thus far by the suppressed Pontifical Commission, Ecclesia Dei. 3. The budget of the Pontifical Commission returns to being part of the ordinary accounting of aforementioned congregation. I also establish that this motu proprio, to be observed notwithstanding anything to the contrary, even should it merit particular attention, be promulgated by publication in La Osservatore Romano in its 19th of January 2019 edition, coming into immediate force, and that subsequently it be inserted into the official commentary of the Holy See, the Acta Apostolica Sedis, given in Rome at St. Peter's on the 17th of January 2019, 6th year of our pontificate, Francis. For now, this looks purely administrative in nature. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, aka the Holy Office, aka the Inquisition, are the ones now primed with overseeing the work of addressing the SSPX's concerns with the state of the Church and normalizing, if possible, their relationship. If that is all this turns out to be, then I don't really care. As the LifeSite article on this attests, many of the same people involved will continue to handle this issue, now with offices in the CDF. I have concerns about the SSPX normalizing their relationship in a period when Vatican officials have investigated traditionalist orders and lay third orders, such as the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, or lately with the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart, so I strongly recommend caution here. Everyone should remain suspicious about this situation and keep a close eye on it. LifeSite News has an article that details some of the administrative changes going on. A link is on the sources blog, returntotradition.org, as usual. For now, I'll just quote one excerpt here. Overall, informed sources in Rome and abroad downplayed today's news, with one source telling LifeSite it's just a redistribution of responsibility and a streamlining of the Roman Curia. It's not an attack on tradition, the source said. Everything will be handled by the same people, probably in the same office, only with different letterhead. There's no reason to panic. The Motu Proprio speaks of a special section to be established in the CDF, so no one will be clearing their desk other than Pazzo, the source added, noting that the real news is that Pazzo is removed. Indeed, the outgoing Ecclesia Dei secretary's reassignment as financial chief of the papal choir is being commonly viewed as a demotion. What are the implications of Pazzo's departure? People in the traditionalist world might regret that Archbishop Pazzo, who has a good knowledge of traditional communities, will no longer be a liaison, one source told LifeSite. He had a good working knowledge and good relations with traditional communities. It's a pity they will no longer have the benefit of this relationship. Other informed sources see today's development as positive, with one informed Vatican source telling Edward Penton the Motu Proprio is essentially a good development towards helping the SSPX return to full communion. According to Penton, the source said it represents a normalization of the ecclesiastical status of traditional communities in the Pius X ambit, which many years ago were reconciled with the See of Peter, as well as those celebrating the extraordinary form. Again, I remain skeptical, if only because various traditional orders have been annihilated for displaying quote-unquote Lefebvrean tendencies, which is a convoluted way of saying that they prefer traditional Catholicism to this flavor-of-the-week interpretation of dogma that we now all suffer under. Now the SSPX had a response to this, which I will read verbatim. The Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei suppressed by Pope Francis, by FSSPX News. The apostolic letter in the form of the Pope's Motu Proprio was published at noon on January 19th by the Holy See Press Office and inserted in L'Osservatore Romano. From now on, the Commission's responsibilities will be placed entirely in the hands of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which will designate a special section to take over its activities. This transfer, explains the Sovereign Pontiff, comes in response to a need expressed during a meeting of this dicastery on November 15, 2017, approved by him on November 24th, and validated in a plenary session in January 2018. The Pope recalls how, over 30 years ago, the day after the Episcopal consecrations in 1988, John Paul II wished to facilitate the, quote, full ecclesial communion of priests, seminarians, religious communities, or individuals until now linked in various ways to the fraternity founded by Archbishop Lefebvre, end quote. The goal was to help them, quote, remain united to the successor of Peter in the Catholic Church while preserving their own spiritual and liturgical traditions, end quote. This preservation of the spiritual and liturgical traditions was ensured in 2007 by Pope Benedict XVI's Motu Proprio, Summorum Pontificum. This historical reminder of Pope Francis has the merit of showing how this pontifical commission was originally founded on the condemnation of Archbishop Lefebvre and his work. In its 30 years of existence, it mostly limited itself to liturgical questions, with the intention of responding to the sensitivity of conservative priests and faithful, and of countering the society of St. Pius X's growth throughout the world. But after the supposed excommunications of the bishops of tradition were lifted in 2009, Benedict XVI believed that the ongoing doctrinal issues were a good reason to attach the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The goal was to begin doctrinal discussions with the Society of St. Pius X. Today, Pope Francis writes that the religious communities that belong to the Pontifical Commission have acquired stability both in their numbers and their activities. They ensure the celebration of the Mass in its quote-unquote extraordinary form. But he points out, quote, the questions dealt with by the same Pontifical Commission were of a primarily doctrinal nature, end quote. These objections and questions are clearly irrelevant to these communities. It is indeed with the Society of St. Pius X that they continue to be an issue. This is what the Cardinals pointed out on November 15, 2017, when they, quote, formulated the request that dialogue between the Holy See and the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X be conducted directly by the aforementioned Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, as the questions being dealt with are of a doctrinal nature, end quote. One conclusion is evident. As the so-called Ecclesia Dei communities have preserved their, quote, spiritual and liturgical traditions, end quote, they clearly do not count in this discussion. If they remain attached to a section of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, it is incidental. They can have the Mass, the, quote, spiritual and liturgical traditions, end quote, but not the whole doctrine that goes along with them. That has always been the Society of St. Pius X's great reproach against Dom Gerard, founder of the Benedictine monastery at Le Bourreau, who worked with Archbishop Lefebvre until 1988, and all those who thought that they should break the unity of tradition in order to negotiate a purely practical agreement. The crisis of the Church cannot be reduced to a spiritual or liturgical question alone. It is deeper, for it touches the very heart of the faith and the doctrine of revelation, Christ the King's right to reign here below over men and over societies. So this is worth keeping an eye on. I've never hidden from my audience that I have no issues with the SSPX. I've never attended Mass with the SSPX or set foot in a chapel of theirs, but I have no issues with them. I do want this resolved, but I, like anyone else who knows the underlying issues, wants this resolved in a way that respects the deposit of the faith and does not undermine the timeless teachings of the Church. Pope Francis is correct when he states that this is largely a doctrinal issue now. That's echoed by the SSPX in their statement as well. And it's worth noting that the mere existence of the Ecclesia Dei Commission has been seen by some as a hindrance on closing this chapter in church history. What was Ecclesia Dei? Well, aside from a pontifical commission, it was the name of the document promulgated by John Paul II that condemned the SSPX. It was the document bearing the decree of the excommunication of the 4 bishops consecrated by Archbishop Lefebvre, as well as Lefebvre himself. Then JP2 creates a pontifical commission bearing the name of the excommunicative order to try to bring the SSPX back into a regular relationship with Rome. That'd be a little like the U.S. government opening an office called the George Lincoln Rockwell Center, whose sole purpose was to address racial issues faced by Black Americans. It's ludicrous on its face. I'll close on this. Yes, remain skeptical, but I don't think this is something to panic over. At least not yet. I'm taking a wait-and-see approach in handling this. And since this touches on the SSPX, is there any interest among the members of my audience for an audio upload of Archbishop Lefebvre's book, An Open Letter to Confused Catholics? If so, I can start working on that. It takes quite a bit of time to record a full book, even a relatively short one like that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click the notification bell below. If you're interested in supporting my work, there are various options in the description below, along with my social media, the Sources blog, and the Return to Tradition Facebook page. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stein. Ave Maria.